Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
In business and in life, you'll often be required to get your hands dirty. But not as often does it mean laying bricks, particularly for women. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Life does throw challenges at us from time to time, but spare a thought for Casey Mackinlay. She was a mum at 18 and very soon a single mum. That didn't stop her though from building and then selling not one but two very successful businesses. In fact, as you'll hear shortly, her son and the responsibility and love for him was what drove her to build a better life. Casey's incredible journey is detailed in her book, Girls Don't Lay Bricks, the title of which refers to her being the only female apprentice bricklayer at a construction site. Chris Ashmore asks Casey why she chose such a male-dominated profession.
Well, a lot of the girls at my school were actually going into beauty and the typical gender roles, and I just wanted to do something completely different. So for work experience, I decided to try bricklaying, which is one of the most male-dominated industries, and turns out I was good at it. They got me laying bricks straight away, and I picked it up quite quickly, and I enjoyed being outdoors. So it was actually quite the right fit for me, even though my arms ended up being quite exhausted by the end of the day. There were a few hurdles. We were working on a site that had all the different trades. So we had the chippies, the plumbers, and I was actually the only female on the site out of all of them. Site supervisor didn't want me there, and he kept telling me to go get a real job or not to come in. And his main issue was that he had to get a separate lot of toilets in just for me. So I know, right?
But with the other blokes that you worked with, they didn't treat you any differently, or did they?
Oh, no, they did, because there was one in particular that didn't want me there. So when you're laying the bricks, usually the first year of being a bricklayer, you're the labourer. You're the one going to set up everyone's spots, getting the bricks, getting the mud, which is the cement. And me coming in and then learning to lay bricks straight away meant that I was telling these labourers that were twice my age to go get me bricks, go get me mud. And they didn't take well to that at the start at all. There was one guy that refused to do anything for me. So I was left setting up my own station and then working basically by myself because he just didn't want to help me succeed or be there. It turns out he had actually been promised the bricklaying role and I got it. It had nothing to do with me in particular, but that was just how it went. But eventually when they learnt that I was there to stay, they got used to me.
Good training ground for work and life.
Oh, it certainly hardens you up. You can't take life too seriously and you can't take anything personal on the work site. I always say that there wasn't any encouragement on the work site, but you definitely got abused if you got something wrong. So if you dropped a wheelbarrow of cement or bricks, you heard it flying at you from everywhere, from every tradie going, "You're weak, you're not strong." And that just happened to whoever it was, not just me. So it definitely toughened you up.
You had your son Kingston at an early age with little or no support from the father. How challenging was that in the early days?
Oh, very. It was very challenging. So I was working towards my career as a bricklayer and had been doing that for a few years and then found out I was pregnant and I was not yet 18. And so what can't you do when you're pregnant? And that's lift heavy things and can't be on a work site. There's no such thing as maternity leave. So I just had to completely change my mindset and change the direction I was going to another direction, really, and look after my son. So every decision I made from there on was actually for him and how to give him a good upbringing.
What was the idea behind giving your son a good upbringing? That was getting into business, was it?
Yeah, so having a flexible workspace where I could be a mum and work and have a good income was the thought that came to me that I needed to do. I needed to go into business and not have a 9-to-5 job. I needed to start my own company so I could have that flexibility to be a mum and earn good income. So that's what drove me to start my events company.
Tell me about that. The company's name was the Promotions Company. How did you start it and how did it flourish?
Well, I worked for different promotional agencies. It was a good income. It was flexible. Again, having my son and needing to be there for him, it meant that I could work many casual shifts and it was a good income. I then learnt that the people who employed me were actually charging my time out at $50 an hour and I was only getting 20. So I had a bit of a light bulb moment, especially as different businesses and large companies kept requesting for me to work on their jobs. It was kind of like, well, why can't they come through me to get me and I could have that whole income?
And that's what you did.
Yeah.
And then it grew from there.
It definitely grew. So at 19 years old, I had Westfield as my first client and they've got multiple shopping centres. So I was providing them with staff for kids' activities, chefs to do cooking demonstrations, you name it really. I was doing it with flyer distribution, just anything to do with their events throughout their shopping centre, I had my hand in. So from there, word of mouth grew and different shopping centres within the Westfields wanted to have me and they've got multiple across Australia. So from there, I ended up taking on like a DFO centres, Mirvac, and that was all just from my mobile phone and my parents' garage. So you don't need anything too fancy. I think just being reliable and consistent in business, it gets you far.
Mazars is an international audit, tax and advisory firm committed to helping clients confidently build and grow their businesses. To find out how Mazars can support your business, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
How many staff did you end up having?
I had over 100 employed for me and it took a huge team to get it all done. We had an operations manager and it ended up being quite the operation.
Would you say you're a bit of a people's person and that's maybe one of the reasons to success?
Yeah, I think definitely being able to relate to different people from all different walks of life has helped me because you can build a rapport quite easily and that rapport is what gets you through. And sometimes like when you make the mistakes, it gives them, you got a bit of a buffer because they like you as a person.
Now, as if all that wasn't enough, having a promotions company with 100 staff and being young with a young child, you bought a disused factory. Tell me about that.
Well, a few mistakes sort of got me thinking, if Westfield had pulled out as my main client, where would that leave me financially? And then when I was looking into buying a house, I was told that as a single parent, I actually needed 2 incomes to be able to buy a house by myself, which is a bit odd because as a CEO, I was able to get a loan, but not as a single parent. So I managed to get a loan and get a factory, and I just thought, well, I'll create a second income as opposed to relying on a man or getting into a relationship. So that was my thought behind it. And I figured with my tradie background, I'd be able to renovate it into another business. And that's what I did.
And what was the business?
An aerial dance studio. So I'd been doing it as a hobby to keep fit, and that is pole dancing, aerial silks, which you would have seen Pink do in her concert, aerial hoop and aerial yoga. And I realised where I bought my factory, there was a half an hour radius of no one offering that. So I thought, well, I enjoy it. If no one turns up, it's just a great place to train and I'd see how I go. So it took a few years actually to renovate the studio and get the right permits because anyone knows dealing with councils, it's not the easiest thing. And then also anyone knowing to renovate in general, they tell you to triple your budget because you can blow out quite quickly. And that's what happened halfway through the project. I ended up blowing out and running out of money and needing to learn all these different other trades like flooring and painting to actually get it open. But after 2 years, I opened it and we actually had 200 people walk through the doors opening day, which was an amazing response.
Now, since then and before COVID hit, you timed it well. You sold both the businesses, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I was sort of I'd been in the promotions company for 8 years and grew and learnt everything I think I could learn from that. And it was time to back off that and see what else I could do. So I managed to sell that. And then I got an offer right before COVID hit for someone that wanted to purchase the business at the studio, the aerial dance studio. So I think it was perfect timing for me. I was pregnant with my second baby and I figured, all right, maybe I'll take it easy and look to do something a bit closer to home because the studio was about an hour away from my house. So I was like, all right, I'll sell up and do something closer to home. And then COVID hit and I was just so happy with the timing of all of that.
Absolutely. You probably make your own luck to some extent though, yeah?
Yeah, you definitely do. I did the hard yards and built up a good business for someone to want to purchase it. So that became an option to me because I put the hard yards in.
What's the future for yourself? Any further business plans?
Well, I actually run Australia's Aerial Silks competition. So I've got 4 events next year. I combined my hobbies and continued on with that. And I have a beauty product coming out in January. So I just am learning again about a completely different industry and seeing what can happen.
And where do you get your inspiration from?
I think it comes from more just willing to give anything a go and the wanting to learn. I like business as a whole. It doesn't matter what industry. I just want to learn about different businesses and how they can work and how they can thrive or what you need to do to change to make it successful. So I enjoy that, and it doesn't matter what industry I am. I always enjoy that element of it. So that's mostly where, so I don't mind doing something a bit random or outside of the box just to see where it could go.
That was entrepreneur Casey Mackinlay. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.